right? And it's kind of a triangle. So like as one leans, like maybe you start leaning a little bit more fast, sure, accuracy and consistency might suffer a little. If I start leaning too accurate, consistency might not suffer, but my speed will suffer, right? We want to find, let's say the middle of that triangle is practicality, I guess, depending on what you're doing. I don't know. All right, next drill. So we talked about grip. We talked about how trigger press does matter, right? But grip is by far more important. Like, spend your effort getting a good grip. It's super, super important. Then what you do with the trigger will matter less, okay? But in the meantime, you guys like hitting what you're aiming at, right? Okay, so let's talk about trigger press. So when we have a good grip, there's a couple things that I've seen different ways of doing this. I used to have this long diatribe of how I explain this, and then I found a drill that explains it itself. So I don't have to talk as much. I'm sure by this point you guys are tired of me talking. So we're gonna do a drill that will explain itself, that naturally pulls things out of people to shoot the right way. The way this drill is going to work, you guys are going to shoot, just get comfortable shooting as accurate as possible, right? I'm not looking for necessarily speed. I want you guys to put as many of the rounds generally touching here. You're not on a clock, okay? What I want you to feel is what your right hand does when you're shooting with only your right hand, okay? So you guys are gonna stand here and you're just gonna kind of slow fire. And then you're gonna hear me say, okay, add your left hand. You're not gonna change anything that you're doing. You're just gonna feel the full benefit of our left hand being on that gun and go, oh, that's pretty great. I really don't have to do nearly as much as I thought I had to do. Think about all these things, because I can shoot this thing one-handed and be pretty accurate. Now I've got the support of this left hand. I shouldn't be pushing into that left hand with my right hand. That right hand shouldn't be driving the gun to the left at all. If I'm doing that, I'm relying on my left hand timing and all this extra stuff. No, that's not what the left hand's there to do. So you add that left hand, that good pressure, whatever pressure you like, start shooting the drill, and what you'll find is shoot at your pace. You're just trying to be accurate. What you'll find is you're able to shoot a little bit faster with your right hand, with both hands, obviously. But what you'll find is you'll be like, oh my God, this is like, my right hand is just like doing all the work. Now I add this left hand, it's pure bonus. Does that make sense? All right, so I'll demo it for you real quick. I'll just go on this target. Eyes and ears, everybody? Okay. So, right hand only, I'm just up, I'm trying to shoot just nice and accurate. Okay, I put 3 or so rounds through roughly the same hole. Now I add that left hand. All that happens is you're like, oh my God, my right hand is amazing. My left hand is amazing. It's all added pressure. Does that make sense? This is a really good way of me having to do less of this and you guys being able to feel and be like, oh, all of a sudden I'm doing a lot more with my trigger, right? I can slap the trigger with my right hand, but it doesn't go quite as well. Not bad, right? I can still kind of get away with it. But what most people start to do is if you slap the trigger with your right hand, you're going to see that, you're going to push with the gun, or you're going to be seeing that you're relying on your left hand to do something. So I'm beginning to think that it's more about doing less with your right hand, like just letting the right hand be on there, and it's just a trigger finger and a grip. That's it. It's not pushing, pulling, doing anything, just on there and isolating the trigger finger. Left hand comes in and does passive recoil control. Make sense? All right. All right, load real quick. I want to show you something. And not to make an example of you, but I just want to show what I'm talking about because you're a perfect example. So just muzzle down real quick. All right, so you can just keep it out. So this is where you're aiming, right? Yeah. Consistently having ones that are drifting here, right? So 2 things are happening with you. You do not at all prep your trigger. You slap, right? Your grip is not doing enough to allow you to get away with that. And that is why you're seeing this, okay? So now what I want you to do is you're gonna shoot with your right hand only again, but I want you to just touch the trigger, right? Just make sure that the confirmation, it'd be good if you could take a little bit out of it, but just eliminate that now. When you see that sight picture, it's where you want. When you have your finger touching that trigger, now you're shortening that distance between, there's a sight picture I want, fire, right? It helps with accuracy majorly. Does that make sense? Yeah. So do that real quick with right hand only. Meet up with that trigger, now take the shots. Good, good. Good, good, good. That one went a little bit low. Good. All right, now add your left hand and do the exact same thing with that trigger. Good. That's grip, right? That's grip, right? When you see one drift way off to the left, that and you're now touching the trigger the right way, that's you doing something with your entire right hand to push the gun off to the left. It helps to have less of that trigger finger moving, but the two work in conjunction. Grip being the more dominant, more important one, so you're weak with your left hand. So the reason I wanted to show this is if your grip is not good, your trigger press is not going to be effective whether it's good or bad. It might help you, like I think you were a little bit more accurate there when you had a better trigger press, but even when you're slapping, because his grip isn't, like left hand, you're getting used to like using it more. Even with a good trigger press, it doesn't necessarily mean he's gonna like improve his results insanely good. Does that make sense to everybody? What are you feeling? What do you think's happening when you have a couple that just drift a little bit left on you?
I think I'm just not using my left hand. Like it's up there, but it's not doing anything.
Okay, so now absolutely max out the pressure with your left hand and just shoot in the head. Nice and slow, controlled fire, crushing with that left hand. Good, right? So what we just solved is, hey, trigger press helps, right? It helps to, like, that alleviates a little bit of it. Because I mean, that's probably malfunction. Right? I can generally be pretty accurate with a good trigger press, but I can't get follow-up shots. But all that's happening is I'm isolating, and all that's moving is my trigger finger.
Yeah.
So all you need is a little bit more of that left-hand pressure, which will then alleviate the margin for error with your trigger press, and then it doesn't matter as much if you slap the trigger. I would still try not to overexert, right? Try and at least touch the trigger, and we'll talk about confirmations. But you just fix the problem with grip pressure, grip pressure, grip pressure, grip pressure. Make sense?
Yeah.
In confirmations. In confirmations. So I've recently kind of changed the way I talk about trigger prep, because when we shoot at speed, we don't do it unless we're back there. So when we're shooting these accuracy drills, I will argue all day that if you meet up, you have the time in your sight picture, you should do what's called prep your trigger, which is generally touching the trigger, right? There's some people that get it all the way to the wall and feel it. Depends on the trigger you have, depends on what type of shooter you are. There's some people that can slap the piss out of the trigger and be accurate at 25 yards, but I would argue they're not as accurate as if they would just prep the trigger. So when I get into confirmations of sight picture, that'll be matching our confirmation with our trigger to our sight picture, which is actually the next thing we're gonna do. Great question. So do you guys kind of see that, how grip ends up being the more dominant thing? In other words, if I tell you, hey, prep your trigger, it didn't make it made a difference, but it didn't make like an insane difference for you. You had one or two that here, but you still kind of drifted a little bit left. That is a grip issue. And once we get that grip fixed, then I can say, hey, you're doing too much with your trigger. Like, it's not killing you, but you're just doing too much with it. The problem is, again, we go back to just, if you tell somebody that trigger press doesn't matter, and then it takes people a while to develop good grip. It just does. It's not easy. It's something that's going to take you consciously now thinking, I need to put that pressure, right? You're a totally capable shooter. You put 4 rounds through the same hole. It was just, hey, I need more pressure with that left hand. Make sense?
I take that shit all day.
Yeah. It gets away from practical accuracy and goes into maybe absolute accuracy. That sounds like a good, that's the only thing that matters. Accuracy is absolute. You guys heard that before? Or whatever. What is the saying? Like, speed is good, accuracy is final.
Heard that one.
Okay. Like, not if there's a knife in my stomach. I don't really care, So the idea is we need to balance those things. Practical accuracy. I like practical accuracy. And with a handgun, look, there's a certain amount of accuracy that's acceptable. And there's a point where it becomes I am okay with hitting, this. I know I'm going to hit with somewhere in here versus at 25 to 30 yards that I'm taking the time to stat. Can I do that? Yeah. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Nah, probably not, right? So that's what I call kind of practical accuracy. In order to do this, guys, we need to read targets at different distances, okay? And this is where we've got time, so I'm going to break you guys into kind of getting to shoot what you're going to shoot with different confirmations and rotate you guys through a little bit so you can play with some of the targets in different confirmations. But sight picture confirmation or acceptable sight picture or whatever. Everything under the sun in shooting has been taught before, so none of this is some of it is my spin on it, but none of it is I'm a wizard and I came up with it, okay? So confirmation is basically what do I need to see based on the target size and distance in order to ensure my hits. So as we did earlier today, what did you guys really need to see, or what's ideal for you to see at what we would call confirmation 1 when you guys were standing real close, drawing the gun out and shooting? In order to hit your alphas, right? That's anywhere within this box is the most desirable hit on this target, right? All your points are right there. Same thing with a human being. Center mass, that's a desirable hit. So what did you guys need to see at 3 to 5 yards?
Nothing.
Not much,
Just present.
right? Just present the gun. The truth of the matter is really honestly that. Like if you have a good consistent grip, your grip's pretty much a sight picture, right? Now, the reason we have to be careful about saying that is because then people will ignore something giving them more data, like a sight or a red dot, right? I like the idea of saying, yeah, I don't need to see it, but I'd rather put it in front of my face so that I can start to gather data from it. You know what I'm saying? But am I gonna wait? If my grip feels good, probably honestly, even if my grip doesn't feel good, life or death, someone's like running at me, I'm probably gonna pull the trigger anyway, right? I'm probably not gonna be like, wait, my grip doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Now, as you get further from the target, that changes. Hey, I've got a little bit more time. Maybe if I fumble a draw, I might kind of go, hey, I've got the distance and the time. I believe human beings are way smarter than we give them credit for, as long as they are putting the effort into making these things subconscious. Makes sense? I see people fix problems that are dynamic in shooting competition insanely fast all the time because they're doing this thing over and over again. It becomes a fluent language to them. Make sense? So, confirmation. You guys said, my grip, maybe a flash of red or a flash of the front sight, right? That's kind of your confirmation 1. Okay, it's pretty easy when you're at 3 yards to use that in order to shoot an open target, right? You'll get to the point where you could use that at 3 yards to shoot the head of a target, right? Confirmation 1 is kind of that flash sight picture. I'm just kind of tracking what's going on. I'm seeing a flash of something, okay? Then we go a little bit further back. We haven't really shot anything that far away, but you know what would be similar to it is like when you guys were doing the bouncing ball drill where you're watching the dot, fire, dot comes back down and you're firing again. I would start to call that more of a confirmation 2, right? You're using, hey, I blew through confirmation 1 and now I'm at confirmation 2. That's me seeing the dot, deciding to fire. I'm still expecting the dot to return to where I'm looking, and basically I see it return and I'm firing. I'm like, okay, cool, that dot's gonna return to where I'm looking. I don't need to measure any sway in the red dot. I'm expecting it to return there and taking advantage of it when I see it return there. Does that make sense? That would be generally what I would call confirmation 2, right? And again, this is acceptable sight picture. The original terminology from this comes from the Practical Shooting Association, Ben Steger. So he might have a different specific definition of this. I'm giving you, I think confirmation 1, 2, and 3 is a great way to put it. So I'm using those words, and then I'm putting my own words into what I think it is. So it could be exactly the same as his, might be slight deviations, all right? Now, confirmation 3, what do you guys think confirmation 3 is? Confirmation 3 is going to be, I might be watching the sway in my optic. Like I might, at a certain point, right, you get far enough away, a target's small enough, you might have to use timing because there's no way to get more stable, right? It's like, I am literally going to, like when we did this drill, confirmation 2, you guys fired, dot returned, and you fired again, right? Because you're like, my dot's not going way out here, like it's within this realm, it's gonna land here. Confirmation 3 would be, I fire, maybe my dot lands a little left over here because the targets so far are small. I drag it here and maybe it's moving like this, and then I want to time when it's in the most ideal perfect position in order to ensure accuracy. It is starting to teeter on absolute accuracy, and I would almost argue it's starting to teeter on not practical for a handgun, right? But there's times you gotta use it. There's times, especially in competition, if I have a no-shoot target with a freaking at 25 yards, I'm not just gonna shoot that confirmation 2, I'm probably gonna chill out, give up a little bit of the time in order to hit those shots. There's an argument to be made, is that practical or is it not practical for the real world with a handgun? I don't know. I'm not gonna feel good about taking a 25-yard headshot on a real person with a real hostage in front of them with a handgun. Probably be like, hey, who brought their rifle, right? And it just is what it is. So those are our confirmations. What do you think we should do with our trigger? You guys know what trigger prep is? You mentioned it. Does everyone kind of know what that is, where you're taking the slack out of that trigger and you get to the wall? Can we always do that?
I try to.
Try to. Most of you don't.
That's the right thing to do, but
You try to, yeah, absolutely. But if I slow mode your fingers, you're not doing it. If I told you to shoot two rounds as fast as you possibly can in that target up close, and we slow mo your finger, you're not technically prepping the trigger, right? That's just the way that most, but if we push you back 25 yards and I tell you put 2 alphas on that target, I think you're going to be more successful if you prep the trigger because you got time. It's built into your sight picture. Why not? We want to match the confirmation of our sight picture to the confirmation of our trigger. Okay? So when I'm up close, and all this again is based on all the fundamentals I taught you guys today. Okay? So if I have a confirmation 1 sight picture, what I would call a confirmation 1 trigger press is going to be, I'm not intentionally trying to slap the piss out of the trigger. I'm trying to stay with the motion of the trigger, right? And it really helps if I start with trigger prep. That starts to show me the usable motion of the trigger to where I'm not going to have crazy big separations from the trigger. What happens if we have these big separations from the trigger, we won't probably notice it up close, especially if you have a good grip. You can get away with it. But what it does is a lot of times at distance, it will create a tendency with that big gross movement to move our other fingers and create more movement with our right hand and do more stuff with our right hand than we need to do. How did that work for all of you guys when you were shooting one-handed with your right hand? Not great, right? Limiting the movement of what we're doing with the right hand and the trigger finger is advantageous in my opinion. When you watch high-level shooters shoot, this is what they do. At close, they just mimic the distance that the trigger travels, right? This is also why a lot of people like to get super light and super short triggers that they can kind of slap. But you'll watch certain open shooters that are very accurate, very consistent, and very fast, stack a lot of alphas. Like Christian Saylor is a good example. He will shoot a ton of alphas in open division where he doesn't necessarily need to, but he's kind of doing the same thing, trying to prep or mimic the movement of the trigger. Does that make sense? Confirmation 2. What takes a little bit longer, right? We blow past confirmation 1. Now we've got to wait for that like red dot to be there. So it takes about what, 1.2, 1.3, depending on how good your draw and presentation is. In that amount of time, is it conceivable we could probably at least touch the trigger and meet up with it as we're presenting the gun? Right, so it's not going to slow us down. We just don't want our trigger press to eliminate or slow us down when we're trying to be quick. We don't want to have to wait for it, right? So we want to kind of touch the trigger. If you're good at it, you'll probably get a little bit of prep in and be able to go, there's my dot, right? We want to reset the trigger in recoil, right? So not waiting and listening for it, just relax the finger. Just relax your finger. Fire, relax your finger, and it'll reset for you. Make sense? Now, confirmation 3, way the heck out there, shooting really slow or shooting perfect things on there. Bro, you got all the time in the world to prep your trigger. Why not? Okay, why not do it? One of the demonstrations that people were talking about when they wanted to get rid of trigger prep was that slapping drill that we did. And it's a really good drill, I love it. And he basically timed himself, buzzer would go off, slap through the trigger. And what I did, I was like, okay, I'm gonna time myself prepped on the trigger and shot. And it was like every single one of them went from being like 0.2, 0.9, or 0.19, 0.20 to like 0.14, 0.15, 0.16. So it actually ends up being faster because the time's built into my sight picture. And we're in that distance, what do we need to do? We're trying to eliminate the time. We're watching our reticle do this, right? And your brain essentially goes, now, and fires, right? So if we can shorten the amount of movement and the amount of time between that, where I'm just sitting on the wall of the trigger and I go, there's the sight picture, boom. That substantially, for me, improved the groups and the ease of what I was doing. Even with a good grip, I could kind of replicate the same thing, similar, but I lost a little bit. So match your trigger press to your confirmation. Does that make sense to everybody? I will demonstrate each one of these confirmations. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start up close, we'll work our way back, Confirmation 1. Right, from the draw, this is what confirmation 1 looks like from the draw. All right, one more time. Watch what my finger's doing. That's a 106, 2 shots. Like if I try and focus on trigger prep, I might get the split faster, but on that second one, if I'm honest, I'm not prepping. I'm staying with the trigger, just mimicking the motion of the trigger, so that helps. But calling it, you could call it prep, it's just a different kind of prep, right? If I gotta paint a really intricate model, I'm gonna have to be very careful with the way that I'm prepping that and doing that. If I have to paint a wall, it's just gonna be like, on there, right? I kind of got away with it, right? So as you get higher level, you have a good grip, you do all that stuff, you might be able to get away from it. Confirmation 2 on the head, or I'm sorry, on the chest. That's a more sure thing. That's like pretty much every time I'm gonna be able to do that. You'll see my fingers stick with the gun more. I'm seeing 2 red dots there. Yes, I'm expecting the red dot to land because my grip feels good, I'm locked in behind the gun, but that would be confirmation 2. Does that make sense? Trigger press and sight picture. All right, let's take a long walk. So now I'm a good distance back, right? This is 20-ish yards. This is gonna be what I would call, like, I am literally wanting to see my sight picture in the center of that target, take advantage of it. If you watch my trigger finger, I will prep much better on this one, right? 175. I pretty much felt that trigger the entire time.
Yeah.
Those are 2 alphas, nice and close, 167. I'll try and slap, and we'll just see. Right now I have, I think all alphas, maybe with the exception of a wide Charlie. I'm gonna just slap now and just care less, and we'll see what it does accuracy-wise. I missed the target, right? So to me, can I slap my trigger and hit at this distance? Like if I take the steel, right? Here's me slapping my trigger. Yeah, I can. But I'm also standing still, static, and I have the time built into my aiming scheme, so why not make a better trigger press? Does that make sense to everybody? You got the time from this distance. It takes you, this is your window for aiming. So while you're doing that, as I'm drawing, could I not be prepping my trigger? And wouldn't that be a better thing to do no matter what? Like if I know I'm about to shoot and I'm getting the gun out, why would I not be kind of going, oh, I gotta shoot? Rather than getting to the end and then slapping through my trigger. It just doesn't make sense, right? You're going to end up slapping your trigger because you're closer. Match your sight picture, your sight confirmation should match your trigger confirmation. Good, 176. Teetering on confirmation 2. Let's do one more, stand by. That was absolutely confirmation 2. Shoot into the target. One more. Trust yourself. Your grip is where you've got a better grip than you give yourself credit for. Stand by. Shoot. Good. I think you had one go over the top, right? So that was, again, that presentation, when you changed it. The one you did before that, all your presentations were like this. As soon as I told you to shoot, you went back to doing this, right? So, good. You're still, honestly, the sight picture you're taking is still that of confirmation 1. It's just you could be a little bit more predictive in shooting into that target. So when you're shooting, that's still confirmation 1. Good. Definitely a little bit of extra slap in there than it needed to be, but again, at this distance, didn't really matter. The time to be earned is at the end. Once you have that good grip, you can fire as soon as that gun gets level. So think about just backing off the draw just a hair, make the draw really clean, and then fire into the target. Okay. Does that make sense? Stand by. Good. 181. Dry fire on the draw. That shows me you need dry fire on your draw. Very good. That was a solid one. One more. Good. A little bit of upward presentation, I think. Fix it. Got it. And even if you don't, like if you have something like that, once the gun's out, you can separate your draw from the confirmation, right? So on confirmation, if like right there you saw you had to kind of adjust, you can still finish the drill. It's just, I failed to draw, but I can still shoot on confirmation too. Does that make sense? I didn't maybe separate that super well when I did the demonstration.
But it's me searching for that.
Presentation.
Yeah.
So here's something you guys will all notice. It's one thing to stand close to targets. Mentally, there's something, even if we're aiming at something small up close, it mentally makes you more confident. When all of a sudden we're spatial creatures. All of a sudden you feel something further away, it will pull out weird things in you where you're like, I need to be gentle. I need to do things gently. Don't do things gently. Do them the exact same way you would do it if you were close. Just pick the right confirmation. Make sense? I think that's a little bit of what got to you. It's like, oh, now we're far from the target. We've been shooting close all day. It's different. Like some people will argue there are drills you can do where you put something small and you shoot it up close. It's valuable. I still think there's a whole nother value to shooting things that are actually far away because it feels different. We're gonna have 2 kind of stations set up for you guys to be practiced. So I'll move the targets in a second, but I'm gonna demo both of them. Okay, so target transitions from one target to the other target. Way more important than people give them credit for. As far as competition or whatever, shooting and gaining time. I'm not a particularly fast split shooter. I can do I'll get 114s on this if I'm shooting like a bill drill, but if it's just 2 shots, shot to shot, I'm usually like a 1.8, 1.9, sometimes even 2.0. It's not insanely fast, right? What I can do is transition very well, especially up close. I'm shooting into targets a lot sooner than a lot of people are, and there is a ton of time to be gained there. It's also just a really good skill to have in general. Okay, again, this is another thing that really tails into confirmations, right? If I'm super up close and I've got 2 targets that are real close to each other, I can kind of get away with a little bit more sloppy and not as perfect. The biggest things you guys are going to remember this is transitions are 100% a visual thing. So if you've been noticing today when we do our draw, when we do anything, I'm always telling you pick a spot on the target. If you can start that now versus later, you'll be so much more thankful for it. So as you're doing these transitions, pick a spot, let your eyes set the limit for where you want your gun to go, okay? So a lot of people say eyes lead, gun follows. To me, that never clicked. It's true, but it never like I was, Let your eyes set the limit for where you want that gun to go, okay? Generally, if you're pushing too much, you will surpass the limit where your eyes set. But if you're just bringing the gun there, it will go right to where you're looking, okay? So again, there's two big mistakes that you can make in transitions. What do you think they are? I said them earlier about pretty much, they're like universal mistakes of shooting.
I stare at my dot.
Stare at your dot, that's definitely one.
Over-traveling the target.
Over-traveling or under-traveling. So over-exertion or under-exertion, right? If I overexert, now there's some people that could get really good at overexerting. Like Lucas is really good when you shoot rifles, why he looks like a robot. For whatever reason, that is not like the way I teach people, would teach to transition, but he's pretty good at it, right? He can do that. Some people can. I am much more consistent and shoot much sooner when I kind of don't think about speed. I don't think about trying to get the gun there. I think about, I'm done with this target. I'm now wanting, like I think about being specific with my eyes. I'm done with this. Now I'm looking to that and the gun will just go to it. And I just know when that gun's arriving, I can start shooting. Think of how predictive we should be in transitions. We're behind the gun. We just got done shooting. If we, like, we don't need to do this like drag, pause, shoot, especially when we're up here shooting confirmation 1 or confirmation 2. Be very aggressive with your transitions. When I say aggressive, I don't mean jerky and hard. I just mean shooting sooner, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a drill on these two targets. I'll spread these out just a hair, and I wanna show you the difference between like what looks maybe fast because I'm jerky and I'm going and it's like, versus what's actually really fast. So these targets over here, the drill you guys are gonna be doing is just left target, right target, right? And I'll kind of do, just for the sake of it, I'm gonna do another drill that I do with transitions, which is 2, 2, 2, 2, okay? So I'm going to the chest, to the chest, to the head, all in kind of a box. All I want you guys really to worry about is just to the chest, basically back and forth. And both of these drills are gonna be pretty similar. This is just gonna have a little bit more of a visual aid. Iteration 1, Garrett is going to overexert, be super jerky, drive the gun, go crazy, right? See what it looks like. That look fast?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it looks fast, right? What happened?
Miss.
You know where my dot was? Right here, okay? Overdrive. How did that Delta get, or how'd that Charlie get there? Overdrove, right? These actually ended up being okay, right? Because I kind of reset into like what I was doing. So 2 alpha in the head, but that's kind of like my stopping point. It's kind of where your focus returns. 221 with 2 misses, okay? Tell me if this looks a little bit more relaxed. Do you see the difference? Sure, the shooting is fast, but am I having to do this? It's wasted movement, right? Now, sure, I shot in. I'll take that all day though, because that was a millisecond from being that, right? So did I shoot a little bit early? Yeah, I'm close. Oh well, I could back off. That was a 214, way faster, right? And all my hits are there, right? 2 alphas, or 2 in the head, alpha Charlie, but when we're going ahead, I don't really care. I'm going for the head, right? And then 2 alphas here, right? So, and like, does that make sense? Is that visually a good demonstration of like, the first one I'm like, Second one, sure, I'm pulling the trigger fast, but if I put my eyes to the right spot, I'm just 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there. The less motion I put into it, the more specific I will be with my transitions. And I can shoot when the gun's arriving. Make sense? Let me do it a little bit more chilled out and slower.
Splits the same?
Let's see. So 8-4 draw, 1-8 split, 2-0 split, 1-6 transition, 1-9 split, 1-7 transition to the head, 2-1 split, 1-9, yeah, pretty much all the same, roughly, right? And the truth of the matter is because even though this is a head box, I need the same confirmation I need to hit the A zone, right? I'm using the same confirmation. All right, so I'll chill out. When you guys do the transition, this is kind of what I want to see. Shooting into the target. Notice that? Pop, 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 pop. Not pop, 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 pop. That doesn't do me any good. So that was correct. This is incorrect. right? Overexert, drive to the target as fast as I can. Doesn't do me any good, just makes me miss. Questions, comments, concerns? I can look pretty cool at 3 yards.
Yeah, when you say lean into the target, what can I see that?
Shoot into the target, shoot into it.
Okay, I thought you said
Meaning, so like, I would much rather see rounds, when we're transitioning from target A to target B, I would much rather see rounds land here, where if I see rounds land over here, you didn't set a good limit with your eyes, or you did set a limit with your eyes, you just overexerted and pushed past. Does that make sense? Efficiency, right? The 2 big mistakes. An underexertion would be you're shooting and you're just like, I have all day. Less common, right? Overexertion is the most common. Yeah, that drill's really fun to, I generally do that at like 7 yards, but it's fun to sometimes just burning stuff down is fun. Drill number 2 is called Pong. Pong, I just made this up. I don't know, it's trendy. So Pong is, you can kind of dry fire it and you can shoot it. It's just you bouncing, you practicing setting your left and right limit. Pong, you can start off visually, right? You don't need to draw into this drill. This is purely just a gun is up and you're shooting, right? Separate a little bit. Your eyes are driving the optic. The optic is not driving your eyes. Does that make sense? So you'll come out, you'll look where you want, and then just practice back and forth. It's one of the best ways to train your eyes to get out in front of that dot, right? And be specific. You guys notice how much effort am I putting in to doing this? And now if I need to transition like really wide, right? I can start to speed up a little bit, but my eyes need to get there first. Get your eyes there, set the limit for the red dot. You don't need to rush as hard as you think. You will earn way more time by being ready to shoot when you get there. When you get to distance, the principles are the same. You're just going to, like your confirmation, have to be a little bit more, hey, I might over travel a little bit, right? When I'm 25 yards away and I transition, if I see the dot move on the target a little bit, not a big deal. If I see the dot go to the left of the target completely off and have to come back, I overexerted. Start almost racing your eyes with your sights. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then as soon as your sights start beating you there, that probably means you're like overexerting or not being visually specific enough. You feel it? You feel how there's one way where you're focused on the targets, your eyes are kind of independent and they're dragging the gun. Mm-hmm. There's another one where your eyes are like kind of stuck to your gun.
They're just meeting paired with each other.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so you don't want them to be paired. You want those eyes to be leading, and then all of a sudden that gun arrives with it. I say it this way. Imagine there's a rubber band connection between your eyes and your gun. If I go this way, the rubber band is automatically going to pull that gun over there. It's not going to snap it. It's just going to go this way, there. And as it gets wider, then I might get a little more snap, right? If I'm looking here and I do this, then I might snap a little bit more with the gun because there's a longer distance to travel. But if I have a short distance to travel, I don't need much snap. It's just going to slightly pull it to where I'm looking. Good analogy? Does that help? Do you feel that a little bit when you're doing that?
Yeah.
Sure. Good. Good. Start trusting it a little more. You're doing a really good job. Start trusting that that's going to land, like that confirmation, right? You're not over traveling, you're nailing it. So just shoot sooner. Expect it to be. Good. Good. Over travel, not bad. You have one more mag? Do one where you're like, let me show you the pace. Because I know you're good enough to do it. See that? I'm not afraid to miss. There's one or two of those I think that went right. But once you feel that, then you'll realize you back it off. You'll be like, oh, I had a tenth or let's say 1.5 of a second in there. Good. We finally got to a place where you have one mic over the right shoulder. You are a good enough shooter. IDPA won't, you shoot IDPA you said. IDPA and steel won't do this to you. You need to push for misses. because you're a skilled enough shooter to where that next rung for you, it's only going to come from you seeing what you can, like, where do I fail? Where do I mess up?